X-Men Days of Future Past is widely regarded as one of the best X-Men films and one of the best Marvel movies in existence. It not only succeeded its predecessor in X-Men First Class and brought back members from the original trilogy, but it reversed some tragedies and mistakes of the original series and emerged as an exceptional chapter in the X-Men saga. Apocalypse had only been briefly seen on the cartoon and as a teaser at the end of Days of Future Past, but it seemed that 2016 was the time for us to see him on the big screen. One thing that history has taught us is that it is often difficult to make a solid third sequel if the second film blows everyone away, and that it is sometimes harder to make a second film better than the original if the first exceeded everyone's expectations. This is seemingly the case with the X-Men films, as Logan being the third film in Wolverine's trilogy and X2 and Days of Future Past and Singer's trilogy all exceeded expectations. X-Men Apocalypse was cause for excitement because Apocalypse himself is a big deal. The guy can cause mass destruction at will, and Oscar Isaac is an immensely talented actor. I will say that Oscar did good with what he was given, but he certainly could have been better. I feel that the movie did an okay job of building him up, but I do feel his recruitment of the Four Horsemen could have been done a bit differently. There were times when I was unsure whether or not Apocalypse had complete control of Angel, Psylocke, Storm, and Magneto, because despite his echoes of building a better world, it sometimes seemed like his Four Horsemen just said, "Fuck it, let's ride." Apocalypse himself is a towering opponent as seen in comic form and as easily evidenced by his name, but my main issue with his character is that we hardly got to see moments of him making his towering presence be felt. While he did get to battle in the movie's later moments, I couldn't help but wonder could the movie have shown more of his abilities as opposed to just mostly having him work through the Four Horsemen. I wanted to see Apocalypse as this giant reign of terror like he was shown in the early trailers, yet I never really felt that way about him while watching the film. Regardless of how I feel about Apocalypse, James McAvoy and particularly Michael Fassbender and Evan Peters were all great in the film. James McAvoy continues to portray Charles as a man with the belief that mutants and humans can coexist, even if humanity says otherwise. I took a particular liking to Magneto's storyline in the film, and he delivered a heartbreaking scene in the forest with his daughter and wife. It was so heartbreaking that I don't feel anyone else could have done better. I like the fact that Magneto's quote-unquote good side had to be broken again so that we could be reminded just who he actually is. And despite my ramblings about Apocalypse, I can't deny that the scene with Apocalypse tapping into Eric's rage to show just how strong he is, that scene wasn't awesome. The scene still in sequence with Evan Peters' Quicksilver was arguably better than the Days of Future Past one, though I wish the movie would have done more in the latter half of the film with Magneto being his father and everything. Not only that, but I feel like Havoc's death was a mistake and could have been handled better. Jennifer Lawrence to me was at her best as Mystique in Days of Future Past, but by comparison, she looks completely disinterested in X-Men Apocalypse. To this day, it's still no question that Rebecca Romijn is the best Mystique up to this point, and early on, there were some complaints that the movie shouldn't have made Mystique the quote-unquote leader or so-called captain of the team, and initially I was skeptical. However, I don't necessarily mind it in this film. Given the fact that in this trilogy, Raven met Charles when they were both very young, and that she was with him early on while recruiting some of the members in First Class, I guess I can kinda overlook it. I only hope that if this trilogy continues past Dark Phoenix, regardless of who wins the Comcast Disney battle, that Cyclops will eventually emerge as the leader of the team like he is meant to be. That's one thing I can also give the movie credit for. The new members of the team, particularly Cyclops, Jean, and Nightcrawler, are all great in the film. I appreciated that Scott Summers played a significant role in this film and that he wasn't underutilized like his adult counterpart. I like the fact that the film took time to show Jean Grey's power and her relationship with Charles Xavier early on, because to me, this will no doubt continue over in next year's Dark Phoenix. Bryan Singer called X-Men Apocalypse the birth of the X-Men, and in regards to the end of the film, with their costumes mostly resembling their comic counterpart, I'd say he gets a win as far as that goes. Seeing moments like Jean Grey's Phoenix emerge, Wolverine in his Weapon X form, and the Danger Room at the end of the film all were some of the movie's best moments. X-Men Apocalypse isn't like its predecessor, and in some ways, believe it or not, that's a good thing. While it tones down the seriousness that Days of Future Past had, you still get the sense that the X-Men are needed, even amidst some questionable choices the film decides to make along the way. I think the biggest thing for me is that Apocalypse himself could have certainly been more memorable, and overall, he along with Jennifer Lawrence are some of the biggest disappointments of the film. Continuity and going in a straight line have never been the series' strongest suits, yet that wasn't seemingly X-Men Apocalypse's biggest issue. Coming off of Days of Future Past would give anyone reasonably high expectations, yet it seems like Apocalypse wasn't quite destined to reach them. For what it's worth, I feel X-Men Apocalypse is one of those films that is underrated in the fact that it doesn't get the credit for what it does right, but it is ultimately a so-so third film that could have been more apocalyptic and definitely and sadly waste some of its potential.